One of the little things that I love in The Lord of the Rings is a reference that Sam makes about one of his relatives, and it's not the Gaffer. The moment takes place during the Company of the Ring's entry into Lothlorien. They've crossed the Nimrodel, which was cold, but its touch was clean. And they, or Frodo at least, felt that the stain of travel and all weariness was washed from his limbs. They encounter Haldir and other elves of the Golden Wood, and after a night spent on the flats, they proceed into the Elven Kingdom, needing to cross the river Celebrant to do so. Compared to the Nimrodel, which they could just wade across, this is not so easy, as Haldir tells the company that the Celebrant is already a strong stream here, and it runs both swift and deep, and is very cold. We do not set foot in it so far north, unless we must. But in these days of watchfulness, we do not make bridges. This is how we cross. He then extends a rope to the other side of the river, and it is tied to trees at either end. And then he basically tightrope walks across it. Legolas notes that he can walk this path, but the others have not the skill. To assist them, then, Haldir puts up 2 more ropes at different heights, and so by taking hold as they are able, and with some slow and cautious movements, they all manage to get across. Of Sam's effort, we read that he shuffled along, clutching hard and looking down into the pale, eddying water as if it was a chasm in the mountains. He breathed with relief when he was safely across. "Live and learn," as my Gaffer used to say, though he was thinking of gardening, not of roosting like a bird nor trying to walk like a spider. Not even my Uncle Andy ever did a trick like that. And there he is, Uncle Andy, that member of Sam's family who just kind of fascinates me. So far, we've heard of Sam's father, the Gaffer, quite a bit. And we got a quick reference to his cousin Hal, who Sam says saw a walking tree up in Northfarthing. But that's all we get of his relations. A quick look at the family trees in the appendices shows us that Sam has a big family. Brothers Hamson and Halfred, and sisters Daisy, May, and Marigold. His mother is named Belle, but since the Gaffer is pretty much alone by the end of the book, having been thrown out of his hole in Bagshot Row once Lotho Sackville Baggins takes over, and then eventually needing the Widow Rumble to look after him, I think it's safe to say that Sam's mother is dead. Dead or alive, though, we never hear of her within the narrative, nor of any other of Sam's immediate family. We do get Uncle Andy, though, and the obvious question for me becomes, why? Now, it would be easy to dismiss this moment as just another textual ruin, as the Prancing Pony podcasters have dubbed them. Those references within the book which tease a history within Middle-earth, but only just that tease. When we encounter them, we, the readers, are left with both an appreciative sense of the depth of the world Tolkien has built, but also with a mouth watering for more. In the case of Uncle Andy, we do get a little more. It's a second reference, in a moment which I'll explore more deeply in a moment. For now, it's important only to note that A, it happens, and B, the reference is made after another usage of elven rope. Here we are. Sam is speaking to Frodo in the Emyn Muil. "Why, my granddad and my Uncle Andy after him that was the Gaffer's eldest brother, he had a rope walk over by Tyfield many a year." A rope walk, by the way, is a long, straight way where strands of material are laid out before they are woven into rope. Meaning, in essence, Sam's uncle and granddad appear to have been in the rope-making business. And it's entirely possible that they, or others, have been making rope in that area for a long time. I mean, I can visualize a field where the rope strands are tied together, thus giving the region its name of Tie Field. Whether that's true or not, it seems quite fitting that both mentions of Uncle Andy come at a time when rope is being employed, which I would say is the reason for the mentions we get of him. Because I don't think it's too outrageous to say that rope has become an obsession with Sam as the adventure goes along. And who else would he think of but rope walk owner Uncle Andy when the subject comes up? This obsession, though, begins before any mention of Uncle Andy is made, back when Sam and the company are leaving Rivendell. We're given a short list of the key things which the company members are bringing. Aragorn and the reforged Narsil, now named Andúril, Boromir with his sword, shield, and warhorn, Gimli with his axe and short shirt of steel rings, Legolas with a bow and a quiver and a long white knife, Merry and Pippin, and Sam with their barrow blades, Frodo with Sting and the mithril coat, and finally Gandalf with his staff and his sword Glamdring. For Sam, though, we are given a much more detailed list. The text reads, Sam eased the pack on his shoulders and went anxiously over in his mind all the things that he had stowed in it, wondering if he had forgotten anything. His chief treasure, his cooking gear, and the little box of salt that he always carried and refilled when he could, a good supply of pipeweed, but not nearly enough, I'll warrant, flint and tinder, woolen hose, linen, various small belongings of his master's that Frodo had forgotten, and Sam had stowed to bring them out in triumph when they were called for. Presumably the rest of the company has a similar set of possessions in their packs, special items all their own, as well as some kind of a change of clothing. How much of a change we don't know, but we do know that they at least had cold weather gear. Gandalf tells them all before they enter Moria, you must lay aside much of the stuff that we brought against bitter weather. But I would say it's the fact that Sam has a master in all of this which leads to that detailed listing, and his concern over it. The master-servant relationship is a fact that he never forgets, or ever seems to wish to, since he is devoted to Frodo, who was always Mr. Frodo to him, except for just a couple of instances late in the story. The text doesn't forget this hierarchy either, and it comes out often enough in different ways. Like when the four hobbits come to the Prancing Pony, and Frodo introduces his companions as Mr. Took and Mr. Brandybuck, and this is Sam Gamgee. Or when Sam calls Frodo Master, which he does quite often, as do others. Or when Frodo refers to Sam as his servant, which he not only does, but whoever is responsible for the text in the Silmarillions of the Rings of Power and the Third Age does as well. For Frodo the Halfling, it is said, at the bidding of Mithrandir, took on himself the burden, and alone with his servant, he passed through peril and darkness, and came at last, in Sauron's despite, even to Mount Doom, and there into the fire where it was wrought, he cast the great ring of power, and so at last it was unmade, and its evil consumed. It's all part of the class dynamic between the two, which at times can feel uncomfortable to modern readers, but is very much a fact of their lives. Frodo is one of the landed gentry, as it were, a fine gentle hobbit, as the Gaffer says of him later on. Earlier, of course, the Gaffer is a little less gentle in his language about the differentiation, as he reportedly says to Sam, "Don't get mixing up in the business of your betters." He and Sam are therefore not better. They are of a lower class, laborers, gardeners. And while Frodo does say to Faramir that back in the Shire, certainly gardeners are honored, he still calls Sam his servant. So does Faramir, referring to Sam at their parting as a pert servant. It's a dynamic they all understand. For Frodo and Sam, it's simple hobbit hierarchy, with Sam very much playing the role of his lordship's valet in an upstairs, downstairs, Downton Abbey, Remains of the Day kind of way. Or as Batman to Frodo's officer, a relationship which Tolkien talks about in his letter 187. My Sam Gamgee is indeed, as you say, a reflection of the English soldier, of the privates and batmen I knew in the 1914 war, and recognized as so far superior to myself. A batman is a soldier assigned as servant to an officer. Tolkien was a lieutenant during World War I. And for me, this dynamic is revealed right there in that list of what Sam is carrying. Like the good Batman he is thinking of the things Frodo will need, but has forgotten. Understandable that Frodo would forget something, since he, being the ring-bearer, has a lot on his mind, as any good officer ought to. And so it's Sam's duty to sometimes have to think for him, or at least remember things for him. That he already has hopeful plans of bringing them out in triumph is a little telling, it would seem. As any good servant ought to, he wants to serve his master well, but he also wants the praise and approval of his master. It's quite possibly the only true way that a servant can find his worth. So, to bring something out that Frodo didn't think of, but Sam did, at a key moment where it will be especially useful, can only bring about that praise and approval. This kind of thing happens throughout the quest, from the very beginning, when he, Frodo, and Pippin make their way from Bag End to Crickhollow, where it's noted at the outset that Sam is probably carrying too much in his pack, obviously doing so to relieve his master of any additional burden. "I shall look into it at our next packing," says Frodo, showing him to be a kind and decent master, if nothing else. Worthy, therefore, of Bilbo's and Gandalf's assessment of his being the best hobbit in the Shire. As the quest for Mount Doom goes on, and the burdens on Frodo get ever more intense and debilitating, Sam provides many things for his ever-wearying master, most of which are not simple objects pulled out in a pinch, but food and water, protection from Gollum, the time to sleep, and, of course, literally carrying him up the slopes of Mount Doom. As the company is leaving Rivendell, though, it is just the material things that Sam is ready to provide, and possibly all that he can envision at this point. Alas, it's revealed that there is one thing which Sam did not think of. "Rope," he muttered. "No rope! And only last night you said to yourself, 'Sam, what about a bit of rope? You'll want it if you haven't got it.' Well, I'll want it. I can't get it now." This realization is surely something he will keep to himself. No sense bothering his master with such things. Or revealing himself to his master as being, to use Sam's own word, a ninnyhammer, and forgetting something very important. That would be as sure a way as any to lose that praise and approval which he, the servant, is seeking. It's probably worth mentioning that Sam's full name of Samwise effectively means half-wise or simple-minded. This is not quite as derogatory as it sounds, as it refers more to Sam's rustic simplicity than any deficiencies in the intelligence department. Or, as Tolkien describes it in Letter 131 to Milton Waldman, his supreme, plain-dogged, common-sensible heroism in aid of his master. Tolkien also calls Sam in the same letter the chief hero of the work. Sam would probably disagree, of course, if the number of times he calls himself things like ninnyhammer are any indication. As Tolkien writes in letter 246, he did not think of himself as heroic or even brave, or in any way admirable, except in his service and loyalty to his master. But back to his rope obsession, though. Once they have entered Moria, they are without all that stuff they brought against bitter weather, and a good many other things, too, since they had to hastily enter the Dwarf Kingdom or else fall victim to the Watcher in the Water. As they proceed, Sam is once again given the chance to remember what he had forgotten. We read, "There were fissures and chasms in the walls and floor, and every now and then a crack would open up right before their feet. The widest was more than 7 feet across, and it was long before Pippin could summon enough courage to leap over the dreadful gap. "Rope," muttered Sam. "I knew I'd want it if I hadn't got it." Eventually, the problem is remedied when the company is about to leave Lothlorien. They are given boats upon their departure by the elves. And they added also coils of rope, 3 to each boat. Slender they looked, but strong, silken to the touch, gray of hue like the elven cloaks. "What are these?" asked Sam, handling one that lay upon the greensward. "Ropes indeed," answered an elf from the boats. "Never travel far without a rope, and one that is long and strong and light, such as these. They may be a help in many needs." "You don't need to tell me that," said Sam. "I came without any, and I've been worried ever since." Now remember, Sam has already mentioned his Uncle Andy once, before they entered Lothlorien. Now, as they are leaving, he kind of circles back to him, although he doesn't mention any names. Of this elven rope, Sam continues by saying, "But I was wondering what these are made of, knowing a bit about rope making. It's in the family, as you might say." This thought of rope being in the family is echoed and expanded upon in that second reference in the text to Uncle Andy, which I am at last getting to in full. This moment occurs when Frodo and Sam have left the company at Parthgalen and are trying to get through the Emyn. The clefts and ridges of this hilly labyrinth of rock are proving to be their undoing. At last, though, it looks like they might have a chance of getting down from where they are, even though Frodo has landed on a ledge and is somewhat stunned. Sam says he is coming down after him. No, wait," Frodo called back, more strongly. "I shall be better soon. I feel better already. Wait, you can't do anything without a rope." And it's right here that Sam is perfectly poised to do what he had hoped to do back in Rivendell, to bring out something in triumph for his master when it is especially needed. Alas, he misses his chance, and instead of a triumphal cry, we get, "Rope!" cried Sam, talking wildly to himself in his excitement and relief. "Well, if I don't deserve to be hung on the end of one as a warning to numbskulls. You're naught but a ninny-hammer, Sam Gamgee. That's what the Gaffer said to me often enough, it being a word of his. Rope!" The presumed praise that his master would give Sam at such a moment as this is now totally lost. "Stop chattering," cried Frodo. "Never mind your Gaffer. Are you trying to tell yourself you've got some rope in your pocket? If so, out with it." "Yes, Mr. Frodo, in my pack and all. Carried it hundreds of miles, and I'd clean forgotten it." "Then get busy and let an end down." Frodo is not really that angry with Sam, but they have been lost for 3 days, so his frustration is coming out. Fortunately, so is the elven rope. Sam pulls it from his pack and ties it to a stump, and he is able to lower himself down to Frodo, and they both wind up safe at the bottom of the hill. They have, they declare, escaped the Emyn. Unfortunately, the moment is ruined by one more self-recrimination by Sam. "Ninny-hammers," he said. "Noodles, my beautiful rope. There it is, tied to a stump, and we're at the bottom." As they lament this loss, as well as the ladder they have left for Gollum, the rope unexpectedly comes loose. A bit of unexpected elf magic, although they don't realize it. Frodo then chides Sam on his rope-tying abilities. Sam did not laugh. "I may not be much at climbing, Mr. Frodo," he said in injured tones, "but I do know something about rope and about knots. It's in the family, as you might say." And again, we have that second reference to his uncle. "Why, my granddad and my Uncle Andy after him that was the Gaffer's eldest brother, he had a rope walk over by Tyfield many a year, and I put as fast a hitch over the stump as anyone could have done, in the Shire or out of it." So, this is twice that he's mentioned Uncle Andy, and twice that he has said that rope making is in the family, as you might say. I don't think I might say it. If Uncle Andy took over a rope walk in Tyfield from his father and kept it many a year, then it very definitely was in the family. And while we ruminate about how much money there might be in the rope-making business, it's worth an aside, I think, into what always strikes me whenever Uncle Andy is mentioned, that being his name, to which I always tend to say, Andy. Andy? Andy? And I react like that because somehow Andy just does not feel like a Hobbit name. I mean, by the time we hear about Uncle Andy, we have experienced an awful lot of Hobbit names. Frodo, Bilbo, Samwise, Meriadoc, Peregrine, Fredegar, Otho, Lobelia, Drogo, Primula, Belladonna, Bandobras. I mean, those sound like Hobbit names. Even ones like Ned, Nob, Dora, Hugo, Milo, Angelica. These sound just fine. But Andy? I know I wouldn't feel this way if Tolkien had stuck to his original name, Obadiah. But Andy it became. Clearly it's a nickname, and we are used to Hobbit nicknames. Merry from Meriadoc, Sam from Samwise. Pippin from Peregrine is a bit of a stretch, and Fatty from Fredegar is surely more descriptive than anything to do with his name. But none of them sound like Andy, which for me feels much more modern than perhaps it should. It makes me think of Andy Griffith or Andy Devine. Now, more people might know Andy Griffith than Andy Devine, who was in a lot of John Ford westerns, but both men played the kind of quaint, rustic, homespun country boys who are more at home in the American South than they would be in South Farthing. Of course, Andy Griffith's various screen persona have had that rustic simplicity of a Sam Gamgee. And Andy Devine kind of looks like a hobbit too, so I guess I'm not too far off thinking as I do. Now, the idea of Andy being a nickname makes me wonder, what is his real name? In our world, Andy is short for Andrew, which I guess could be a hobbit name. I mean, if Angelica is. But why guess? Tolkien provides us with the answer. So let us then go back to the appendices and to those family trees of the prominent hobbit families in the Shire. All right, here we are. There's Sam, or Samwise, who is connected to his father, Ham Gamgee, or Hamfast, the Gaffer. And what do you know? Right next to him, as Sam already told us, is the Gaffer's eldest brother, Andwise, or Andy. So, Andwise is Sam's uncle's real name. Well, that sounds more hobbity, I should say. Andwise and his nephew Samwise. It also sounds a little more Tolkien-y when you do a quick internet search and find out that the name Andwise comes from the Old English word Anduis. I'm going with that pronunciation, which translates to expert or skillful, which is surely what Sam's Uncle Andy was, even if he couldn't use ropes to cross a river. As to what he was expert or skillful in, well, that ought to be obvious after hearing about that family business. It's also obvious just by looking at his name, which is Andwise Roper. And then we look up. His father, Sam's granddad, owner of that rope walk, was named Hobson Roper Gamgee. And his father before him, which would have been Sam's great-grandfather, is Hob Gamage the Roper, or Old Gamagee. He is descended from Wiseman Gamwich, which at first seems an odd jump, Gamwich to Gamage. But in letter 144, Tolkien notes that Gamwich is pronounced Gamage. Another nickname then, Gamage to Gamagee, seems fair. And then Gamagee to Gamgee isn't too far to go, I would say. Although, our dear Uncle Andwise didn't stick with Gamgee. Rope making is in the family, after all. So much so that Uncle Andy appears to have changed his name to Roper, which seems like a kind of trend in Hobbit culture, naming yourself and or your family for what you are known for or are good at. Not unlike the hobbits in Bree, I should say, with their habit of naming themselves after what they are known for. Banks, Brockhouse, Tunnelly, Underhill, and that sort of thing. We can see that kind of thing, too, in a couple of generations of the Gamgee line. Looking down from Sam, we get his many children, including Frodo. Not Frodo Gamgee, though, but Frodo Gardener. Sam just has gardener in parentheses after his name, his profession. But his son, Frodo, probably took it up as well and was apparently so good at it that he changed his name to it. And his son, Holfast, kept up the tradition. Gamgee is good enough for Sam, though, which has its own ironic twist. Tolkien informs us, in letter 184, to a real person named Sam Gamgee, in fact, that the word Gamgee is how Tolkien would refer to cotton wool when he was a boy. And that's because Gamgee tissue was a thing in England, a cotton product named after its inventor, Dr. Gamgee. And it was sometimes shortened to just Gamgee. And I say ironic because who does our fictional Sam Gamgee eventually marry? Why, Rosie Cotton, of course. That marriage will take place after the ring is destroyed, when all the hobbits have returned to the Shire and Sam into Frodo's service. He will rise above this level within Hobbit society, becoming mayor 7 times. Yet it's not hard to imagine him maintaining his rustic simplicity as he ages, and remaining content with his status as, if not a servant, then not quite a gentle hobbit either. He knows well the, as Tolkien calls it, nobility of service. Tolkien also calls him this jewel among the hobbits. He certainly seems proud of his laborer ancestry, as his invoking Uncle Andy not once but twice would indicate. Not to mention his twice saying that the very rustic, working-class profession of rope-making is in the family. And it continues to be, as we see in the family tree, that Sam's eldest brother Hamson joined his uncle, the Roper, meaning our dear Uncle Andy. Sam, meanwhile, remains the simple hobbit that he has always been, even if he does achieve hero status. More importantly for him, I would say, he also, during the course of the quest, does receive that praise and approval of his master that he had always been looking for and missed out on with the rope in the Emyn Muil. When on the stairs of Cirith Ungol, Sam ponders whether he and Frodo will ever be put into a song or tale, Frodo tells him, "Why, Sam, to hear you somehow makes me as merry as if the story was already written. But you've left out one of the chief characters, Samwise the Stout-Hearted. I want to hear more about Sam, Dad. Why didn't they put in more of his talk, Dad? That's what I like. It makes me laugh. And Frodo wouldn't have got far without Sam, would he, Dad?" "Now, Mr. Frodo," said Sam, "you shouldn't make fun. I was serious." "So was I," said Frodo. "And so I am." High praise indeed. And the story will be written by Frodo, but also with Sam adding to it as well. And neither of them deem it a necessity to edit Uncle Andy out of the text. And so I say that he is one of the little things that I love in The Lord of the Rings. Thank you for listening, and have a wonderful day.